So glad you're spending some time with us here on our next session, hanging out with Comcast, bringing you our Summer of 50 Pittsburgh Tech Stories. I'm Jonathan Kirsting. And I keep saying, I feel so fortunate because I get to tell all these different stories, all these different angles of things that are making up Pittsburgh's tech ecosystem. And one of the things that we don't often think about, but we need to be thinking about more, which is why I'm glad I have Kathy Risko on today, is the fact that we have sister cities out there. The idea that there are countries around the world that we have this connection to that I think are just, we need to grow and just cultivate, because we need connections around the world in order for our innovation to just go nuts, as it's been doing. But I think it can be even better when we're hanging out with people from all over the world. So Kathy Risko, you are hanging out, of course, with the Sister Cities Association of Pittsburgh. And this was a new association to me. I didn't know much about it before I met you. And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, man, this is good stuff. And I can't wait for me to learn more about it. And of course, for our listeners and our viewers to learn more about it. So Kathy, welcome to the show today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a great honor. So yeah, I mean, Sister Cities Association of Pittsburgh is a new organization. The board created the 501c3 late in 2019, but the idea of sister cities for Pittsburgh and our region is not a new idea at all. Historically, the Sister Cities program has existed in the United States since the 50s. It evolved out of the Eisenhower administration, and the idea was to create global citizens and global citizenry. And they were doing that by asking cities to find cities that were like them all across the globe, and to create these relationships that make sense, and to just have an ongoing, continuing relationship.
Definitely. I think, like I said, I think the concept is great because I feel like we need these connections in the world. We need these anchor points. So it makes it easy for us to go out into the world and explore, knowing that someone's got our back for hanging out like in Da Nang, Vietnam, right? Which is one of our sister cities. So approximately how many sister cities do we have? And I won't put you on the spot to name all of them because I'm sure it's ever changing, but I know there's tons of them. And some of them I think are very surprising as well, too.
It is. So Pittsburgh has 20 sister cities in 18 different countries. But to be fair, not all of those sister cities at this moment in time are activated. We have strong relationships with 4 different sister cities right now. Those are Bilbao, Spain, and actually the Tech Council led a trip to Bilbao back in 2017. Saitama City, Japan, which is just adjacent to Tokyo, Da Nang, Vietnam, and Wuhan, China. So
one of all places, a good figure.
Of all places, yeah. And you know, the relationship with all of those cities is varied. If you were to think about the Sister Cities program as a 3-pronged stool or a 3-legged stool, those 3 pieces are cultural exchanges, educational exchanges, and economic exchanges. And that's what makes the sister city relationship work. It's also a reciprocal relationship. So what we bring, what Pittsburgh and our region can bring to a city across the globe, we also can learn from a city, from that city, as to how they do things. So a really great example of that is, you know, Da Nang, Vietnam has an amazing waterfront, and they've spent much of their time and effort revitalizing their waterfront. And what can Pittsburgh learn from that? So many different things. And what can organizations like River Life learn from organizations in Da Nang that are doing the same thing? And facilitating those conversations is my job. And it's really exciting to be able to have the opportunity to bring people together to share innovative and interesting ideas that will further our society in many different ways.
Absolutely. I mean, I have some specific examples as to how this has worked. I've actually witnessed it firsthand. First and foremost was, of course, as you mentioned, we did that nice trip to Laval, which we did some benchmarking there, learning how they brought their city back through arts and culture. So I know we had many takeaways there. We had many city leaders and cultural leaders that went on that trip with us. And I think the exchange that happened there could have only happened because there were people in Bilbao that welcomed us and showed us around and made connections. And they're very long lasting. And most recently with Saitama City, Japan, they had a group of folks in Pittsburgh touring different Pittsburgh tech companies. We showed them around, and then they invited us back there to talk about robotics stuff. We actually brought Gecko Robotics with us back to Saitama. So it was really fun to see this back and forth. They want us to go back again, but then the whole COVID thing kind of hit. So we kind of had to put that on ice for just a little bit. But we know eventually we will all get back to international travel, hopefully, you know, in the near future, and we can begin visiting these other countries and building more of these relationships.
Hopefully soon. I mean, I come from a family that spent a lot of time traveling internationally. I've done it since I was young. So I've been very fortunate. And the idea that I can't go where I want to go
Yeah.
is very, I feel,
Yeah,
you feel
yeah.
like you're a little bit in a box, right? But, it's also been a very interesting time. So it hasn't stopped the momentum of Sister Cities. It's just created us a different opportunity. It's allowed us to think in a very different way and to pivot to what makes sense now during COVID. So,
Mhm.
a really good example of that is I was actually on I was on a Zoom call last night. It started at 9:30 at night with our friends in Da Nang, Vietnam,
Right.
and we were talking about their recent trip that we were supposed to go to Da Nang this year for a mayor's conference, and there's also a tech conference that they were going to put on that your esteemed colleague Audrey Risko was hopefully going to be a speaker
Exactly.
for. It's now been moved to 2021, and we were talking about having Audrey speak at that conference, but so we've put off the plans a little bit. But they also said to us, it would be really interesting when they were here last year. Pittsburgh City Council and the mayor's office declared Da Nang Pittsburgh's Sister City Day, and that was on August 21st. And so they want us to help them put together a Zoom call with elected officials here and elected officials there to celebrate Da Nang Pittsburgh Sister City Day on August 21st. And so that's just another a way that we can continue to have a relationship and strengthen our relationship.
Definitely.
In this time when we're all looking at each other on screens. So so that's exciting. I mean, one of the other things that we're doing is so Doha, Qatar is not a sister city of Pittsburgh. However, we have been talking to representatives at the embassy multiple times this spring, and we are anticipating hopefully being able to bring the ambassador and a small delegation to Pittsburgh this fall, assuming everything is okay with travel.
Right.
And to set up that meeting, we are proposing a series of Zoom calls around those three pillars that I talked about, culture, arts, and economics. And so those will happen in July, August, September, leading up to this visit, so that we, again, can strengthen the relationship so that when they do get here, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time, hello, I am, that sort of thing, but rather dig into how we can work together. So, so we're looking for different ways to be able to facilitate these relationships during this interesting time.
I love the fact that you're not letting the lack of travel keep you from building relationships. So what's your background? What obviously you mentioned before that you used to lots of traveling, international traveling in your days. What's your background and what got you so interested in leading this pretty cool effort up?
So I am the first executive director, the inaugural executive director of the Sister Cities Association of Pittsburgh. Just so you know, in the past, the Sister Cities program for Pittsburgh has been housed in the mayor's office, or at one point in time, it was actually housed at the URA. Mm-hmm. And so when Mayor Peduto 2 years ago asked my board chair, Jim Wolf, if he would help to reinvigorate the Sister Cities program for Pittsburgh, he said yes, and he brought together a group of volunteers, and they have spent a lot of time getting this organization to a place where they could hire an inaugural executive director. I started on May 1st, so I started in the middle of COVID in this very interesting international job.
Middle of COVID, can't
go. And as I've been saying, like, the pivot has been interesting. But my background is I've been in the nonprofit sector in the Pittsburgh region for 20 odd years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a native Pittsburgher, and I have worked in just about every interesting different sector in the nonprofit world. I worked for Leadership Pittsburgh for a number of years. Right. I was also a startup executive director of an organization called Connect, the Congress of Neighboring Communities, which was out of the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at Pitt, which was an effort to get the city of Pittsburgh and the municipalities that share a border with the city to work together to address common public policy issues.
There you go.
So I've worked in public policy. I've worked in women's healthcare. I recently, before this, I've been teaching. I taught at W&J, and I also teach at GISB at Pitt. And I was working as a consultant. One of my big clients was Eco Districts, which is a nonprofit that's based in Portland, Oregon, that looks at sustainability metrics for neighborhoods and how to build a neighborhood, bringing everybody with you. So I have kind of this wide range of different experience working with local governments, working with nonprofit organizations, working with foundations. Yeah, it's been an interesting career. When I graduated from Pitt, I also did my graduate at Pitt. And worked there for many years. So I say it's the institution I've spent more time at than anywhere else, and I still teach there. But, you know, I thought I was going to go to the CIA and I was going to be go into international studies and do something there. And I had an internship on Capitol Hill with Congressman Mike Doyle. And all of a sudden I was like, domestic politics are so interesting. And so that kind of got me into that role. And then, you know, it just expanded from there. I worked for the United States Senate for a while, and I did immigration work there. So, you know, I kind of always had that bug. The travel piece has always been personal.
Yeah.
You know, my family traveled a lot. My husband and I travel extensively as much as we can. And this was just, you know, this job just seemed to be the perfect fit for me. It's all the things that I love.
I think it brings together all the different kind of tentacles of what you were doing before into this new thing, which I think is get this thing up and rolling and we're able to start traveling again. I'm looking forward to seeing more people from around the world coming to Pittsburgh and us going out and visiting these other places. Because that's one thing that Audrey Russo has taught me, is the fact that getting out there is such an important thing. That
it's so important
beyond our borders here, because it just opens your mind and opens their minds, and that's when good things really start to happen.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's not, people don't seem as different when you spend time, when you go to their house and sit down and have a meal with them.
Exactly.
You know, it's, you know, and some of the most interesting people I've met in my life have been people who I've bumped into in, you know, in foreign countries where there were no tables and we had space and they sat down. And that's how, like, some of our best friends who live in Tuscany, who we've spent multiple, you know, visits visiting, and, you know, and it was just this random encounter, you know, before we went to Oktoberfest. So, you know, I mean, it's fun stuff like that. And that's, I mean, that's the magic of the opportunity to immerse yourself in other cultures and really learn from other people. So,
in your opinion, how important is it for our tech industry to have these international connections? I mean, I know it's a pretty obvious answer, but I got to hear it from the expert here.
I mean, you can't even quantify it, right? I mean, when you talk about, well, let's take the example of Doha, for example. One of the, you know, CMU obviously has a campus in Education City. But whenever we were talking to people at the embassy and saying, what makes you interested in exploring Pittsburgh and maybe us becoming a sister city of Doha, you know, they said, you know, very simply, like, there's two or three things. One is the technology sector here. They want to learn more about our robotics sector. They want, you know, they want to visit Duolingo. They want to visit Argo AI. You know, they're really interested in the technology that's coming out of the universities here and the research that's coming out of the universities here. And then the other thing is they're really interested in the sustainability that our city has embraced, cool. Right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, the UN SDG goals, the 100 resilient cities, eco districts, all of those, you know, our city saying, our region saying that we believe it's really important for us to look at sustainability for a future strategy, or a current strategy, but a future strategy for our region is really important. They also are looking at cities that are, you know, and this is something that when we look at other sister cities, we take into account. Are they a smart city, or are they embracing the ideals of a smart city, and in what way? And again, what can we learn from them? These relationships are really important in the sense that they have to be reciprocal. It can't just be Pittsburgh getting something out of the relationship.
No, it's going to be back.
It has to be, you know, Wuhan getting something out of the relationship, or Da Nang getting something out of the relationship. And, you know, we're also, you know, one of the things that we're doing, hopefully next spring, it was supposed to happen this spring, but we're partnering with UPMC to do a medical symposium. And so we're going to bring doctors from 10 different countries to Pittsburgh in the spring to talk about all sorts of different, innovations in healthcare. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about vaccine research, if we didn't talk about, everybody's response to COVID, and what does that mean, and how can we help each other? So, there's lots of different opportunities. You can basically pick up any bucket. It can be the technology bucket. It can be the cultural bucket. It can be the healthcare bucket. It almost doesn't matter, and say, what are you doing that we can learn from, and vice versa. So in that sense, it's really exciting. And the tech sector gives Pittsburgh and our region an edge. It makes people look at us maybe twice, three times. And, there's still people who think, oh, we still think Pittsburgh is this dirty kind of, industrial city. And when you tell people,
wrong.
are you kidding me? Like, it hasn't been that way since I was this big. So, it's really an interesting time to be able to promote our region in a way that on a global scale is just, I'm very honored to have the opportunity.
Very cool stuff. I just love hearing you talk about this. It gets me all fired up. So one of the things we like talking about here as part of our summer of 50 Pittsburgh Tech Stories with Comcast is we're trying to figure out ways to bridge the digital divide. And I think we can go a bit beyond that here, because I think the idea, how do we get more kids interested in international opportunities and expose them to the fact that there's cultures around the world and people from around the world that have great ideas and solutions, and that there could be a good back and forth.
So there's actually, I feel like you set me up. There's actually two cities that we're currently exploring an educational exchange that will help to meet that digital divide. One is Da Nang, Vietnam, and the other is Saitama City, Japan. So in both cases, we have a school with Saitama City. We're working with Pittsburgh Public Schools. When they were here last fall, they met with Superintendent Hamlet and talked about what an exchange could be between high school age students in Pittsburgh Public Schools and in a school in Saitama City. And some of that exchange has been interesting. They've been using Marco Polo, which are videos, short videos, because the time difference is really a struggle, right, for these students. So if they can make a short video, talk about something they're interested in, and send it to their friend,
watch it later,
and watch it later, and then vice versa. So technology is really helping us with especially at this point in time, but even ongoing with the time change. Like I said, I was on the phone with people in Da Nang last night at 9:30 our time. We got off at 10:30. I mean, that was 9:30 in the morning for them. They're 11, 12 hours depending on that's pretty significant. So looking for ways that technology can help us facilitate those conversations is really great beyond email. And it's not that we can't do Zoom calls, definitely we will, but creating those exchanges are really, really important. And it's especially important to instill that in young students so that they grow up with a love of understanding that travel can be really exciting. Meeting people who are different from you is really important. Eating foods that you might go, I'm not so sure about this, but I'm going to try, is really, really important. And that's just kind of the next step to making our region more global. So, so we're looking for opportunities. So, I mean, honestly, if there are other technologies out there that we're not thinking about, that maybe some of your viewers are thinking about, the council has ideas,
definitely.
We would love to hear, because we're looking for opportunities for these students to talk to each other.
I love it. And like I said, I have such joy telling these stories, because this is one of these little things that kind of weaves in and out of everything that we do, that goes to show you that we need to have these international connections if Pittsburgh is going to become an even bigger global city. We need that. It's not like maybe, it's got to be, we're going to do it. And you're setting the foundations for so much of that work, Kathy. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time, being part of our Comcast Summer of 50 Pittsburgh Tech Stories today. Good stuff all the way around.
Happy to be with you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this amazing organization and giving me the opportunity to promote, Pittsburgh on a global level. And these things this is really important, and it's really important now more than ever. I think that that in a time when the whole world is facing, one kind of global crisis, that we have the opportunity to talk to each other, and that we can talk to each other honestly, and we can talk to each other with trust, and we have those relationships because we already set those relationships up, and that's incredibly important, and will serve us all so well. So organizations like Sister Cities across the United States, not just in the Pittsburgh region, but across the United States, is so important for how we are going to go to the next place to be able to deal with issues that are so big, that are bigger than any of our cities.
Good stuff. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you.